Alright, hello, and welcome back to this fanfiction reading of Unearthed Arcana by NofBlockz. Yeah. So, hasn't been that long since I recorded the last episode. Got myself something to drink, Anyways, yeah, we're gonna start with chapter 7. Maybe I can get 4 chapters done like I did in the last video. We'll be storming through this. Maybe get to the second section or whatever. Book 2. I don't know what it's called. Season 2. I don't know if it's called whatever. We can look at the chapters. I mean, it doesn't say it in here. Oh, it's volumes. Well, I mean, it's labeled weirdly, but yeah, it's volumes. Okay, whatever. Anyways, let us begin so we can, not waste too much time in the beginning for no reason. Chapter 7, Living Like a Rebel. It had been a week or two ever since the incident in Vale, and although some citizens enjoyed this sudden, abrupt event, others were patriots of the king and labeled the team as a ragtag team of powerful rebels, generating prestige both wanted and unwanted. Cassandra and her team continued to elude and defeat the elite guards, huntsmen, and other forces sent after them. Leonidas paced back and forth in his throne room, now worried. His informant said he'd handle such a problem if it came up. Was he not to be trusted? Was the king used as a pawn? The sound of the doors of his room opening quelled his suspicions, however, as an informant returned with 2 heavy-plated liches wielding spiked barriers and wickedly sharp blades, both adorned with runes. Spellbreakers, Leonidas remembered the names of these soldiers. The 2 gave a nod of agreement. It was time to see if those rebels could survive the actual forces of Shadow Vale. Pelting yet another weak squadron of soldiers down with a barrage of precise arcane missiles, Cassandra had yet to encounter any real foe. Although there were often cases where one had to act smart when a foe came charging at her. Oftentimes the soldiers went down far too quickly for her tastes. Even her team had begun to realize that they had never really made too much progress yet, and they weren't getting any closer anymore to their main goal. Although Yamara complained about the whole ordeal of acting so dishonorably, she followed her friend's actions nonetheless. Yet no real evidence of anything dark, shady, or otherwise was ever noticed while battling these soldiers. Cassandra pondered whether or not her train of thought was broken when the shouts of 2 more soldiers came from the opposite alley. The entire group suddenly jolted up to the sight of these approaching warriors. The sight of these 2 warriors was unique. Dressed entirely in ebony armor with runic spiked bulwarks and sharp blades, the juggernauts seemed human enough. Looking at the void that was the darkness inside their visors, however, glowing motes of color emanated from the darkness, green for the warrior to the left and blue for the rightmost warrior. What most alarmed the group as they raised their aura was the warning that Grim were near, coming exactly from where the approaching dreadnoughts were. Liches. After realizing this fact, Cassandra let out of reflex and concern over her team's well-being, fired bolts of powerful arcane blasts towards the liches, the magic manifesting into light purple balls of sparkling energy. The liches merely blocked the blast, knocking the blast. The liches merely. The liches nearly. Oh my goodness. The liches merely blocked the blast, sending the blasts to the side as if clearing a path of debris. Spellbreakers. Maleficent grunted, opening a rift as her traditional weapon. Her trusty stop sign fell from it into her hand. They'll be able to parry or absorb your spells. Try whacking them hard, Maleficent ordered as one of the charging juggernauts was knocked back by a well-swung arc of a stop sign to their chest. Nodding at Maleficent's advice, Cassandra placed her broom to the side, conjuring her 2 short swords, the splinter-looking slivers of enchanted wood that served as their secondary weapons. Yamara followed suit, a fan of cards conjured between her right fingers, serving as a first fist weapon of sorts, whilst Tabor grabbed the hilt of her 2 daggers. The team focused 2-on-1 on each of the dreadnoughts, forcing them back, parrying blows. Liches were tougher than Cassandra ever thought. Maleficent made it look easy to push them around, but Cassandra noticed that the aura that surrounded them shattered. They then came back in a different color. Barriers, Maleficent explained, parrying a wide arc of his sword. I'm sure you know that they drain aura to support their own life. Yeah, I know, Cassandra shouted, nearly dodging another swing of their blades. Progress was slowly being made against the dreadnoughts, until one of the plated liches swung a grim-like claw at Maleficent while she parried another swing of their jagged weaponry. Making its mark, it pierced through Maleficent's aura, leaving quite a severe scratch on her cheek, and softly knocking her back a few feet as she stumbled, clutching the bleeding wound. You little, Cassandra contained a curse, hopping on her broom and quite literally running straight into the lich, throwing them into a wall before the end of the broom broke through their armor, and a bit through the lich. The other lich attempted to retaliate, but a quickly conjured barrier from their target intercepted the blade. The lich, too, forgot to keep an eye on Teyra, who quickly readied a garrote behind the lich, pulled the fine silver thread back, and kept the lich at a choke point. Ymar had the honors of taking out the last dreadnought, delivering a quick jab of her card into the helm of the fiend. A mere few seconds of deep breathing from the difficult fight. Cassandra was the first to dash towards her injured companion. Maleficent, you're a flesh wound. It's not that bad. It's just a flesh wound. Maleficent smirked and then grimaced. The scratch did quite the job of leaving its mark on the starboard, and although her aura, once it kicked in, would heal the gash, it could leave a permanent scar. Liches were able to pierce through weakened aura after all. Giving a pout, Cassandra quickly recited the precise magical chants and pressed 2 fingers vertically of the gash, channeling healing magic as the gap sealed itself once more. You could have been more careful then, Cassandra refuted, but was glad that was the only major casualty of the fight. Suddenly, Cassandra put 2 and 2 together. You don't think the king asked for, Cassandra began. Maleficent gulped deeply, realizing there may be more trouble ahead for the group. The gang shared a concerned look, then a grim nod. They had their reasons for rebellion now. Lord Nightingale, please, we underestimated, Leonidas began to plead to his informant, who held up an ivory claw to silence the king. Underestimated? People don't just slay liches, nor do normal people slay elite troops. No, Leonidas, I am even more interested in this matter than you think I am, the informant began to speak. However, I am not risking any more soldiers. I want you personally to deal with this potential threat. Leonidas remained silent and listened to the wisdom of his superior. Let it be known that I, Heinrich Nightingale, will give you great riches and power should you succeed. Fail, however, Heinrich began, and Leonidas shook, fearful of the Archlich's wrath. Well, let's hope your people will be merciful, Nightingale chuckled, walking casually out of the throne room. He had his fun, but ultimately he was curious to see if they truly would be of great aid, and they would be a true threat to his rule. After all, he did like to entertain the thought of victory. Even though he had his silent doubts, perhaps this time would be different. Heinrich pondered this, putting a finger on his chin as he returned to the capital of Shadowvale. Chapter 8. It's gonna rain! I can't do that very well. It's gonna rain! The citadel of Vale, the bastion of the True Heart lineage, the magnificent towering piece of modern art that fully encompassed the survival and hardiness of humanity. A bit of a shame a fool of a king resided in it, Cassandra wondered, pacing atop the cliffside overlooking the mighty fortress. Already she could see a few guardsmen here and there patrolling the castle walls, eager to spot intruders and detain them. Of course, considering the perils of failure, that wasn't an option. Hopping on her broom, Cassandra flew over the dense forest and rocky ridges that led to the spire beacon. She never took the time really to notice how out of the way Beacon really was. It had to be a good few miles away from any village, but looking back at it now, it became as apparent as a black splat of paint on a pure white wall. Perhaps she'd ask why it was built here in the first place. Putting the question in the back of her head, she kicked the side of her broom and swiftly dashed through the air, making up for some lost time as the wind rushed through her hair and robes. Eventually she hovered above the concrete courtyard of the academy, hopping off the wooden pole of her transport and adjusting her hat. "So, anything new?" Leveson asked, leaning on the bark of a nearby tree, the leaves softly swaying in the wind and casting a shade over the woman. "No, just a bunch of guards. Nothing too different," Cassandra explained. "I think we might have our siege in a short few." Cassandra said nothing more, flexing her arms and stretching them out. Looking up the sky, Cassandra noticed that it was getting cloudy. It was going to rain soon, and the smell that heralded its coming was, well, refreshing in a sense. "It's going to rain," Cassandra said, not really thinking of anything particular, and simply wandered up next to Maleficent, readying her parasol just in case. "So, Malin," Cassandra asked. "Yes?" Maleficent looked to her fledgling starborn friend. "Why are you always so protective of me, anyways? I mean, I know I am, well, but..." Cassandra trailed off, trying to find the right words to explain what she wished to know. Maleficent let out a deep sigh. She had her orders, but that wouldn't stop her from giving half of the answer. "You're more special than you know. The reason I want to protect you is because you're my friend. That, and I see potential in you others either don't know or are too scared to admit," Maleficent explained, looking in the small stars beginning to glow in Cassandra's azure pupils. "So that's why. Nothing too complicated." Before Maleficent could say anything, she suddenly felt the arms of her friend wrapping around her in a warm embrace, a hug. She was debating trying to pry her off, but she never really had this kind of comfort, this kind of trust. Not even she offered such companionship or acknowledgement of care. "Oh, thanks," Maleficent said, unsure of how to express her emotions. Cassandra then pried herself off her friend and readjusted her hat. "Well, I suppose we should get ready. This isn't going to be a light task." Maleficent nodded in agreement. Quite soon, they'd be invading a keep, taking down a king, and making themselves public. Maybe that wasn't such a bad thing, really. Ozma looked at the gathering rain clouds forming on the horizon, and distant flashes of lightning and the sound of thunder traveling on the wind. Sipping on the reheated cup of tea he brewed, Ozma pondered as he looked to the horizon. How old had he become? It perhaps was only a good 1,000 years, but... "Ozma, are you all right?" Ymar asked suddenly, snapping Ozma out of his thoughts to look behind him at the young red and white dressed princess. "Oh, greetings, Ymar. I didn't hear you come up," Ozma said with a soft chuckle. "Yeah, learning a few tricks from Terra. Figured I'd try," Ymar explained, but then asked once more, "But are you all right?" "Yes, I am, Ymar. I am merely gazing into the distance and letting my thoughts wander. It's a soothing activity for me," Ozma smiled, sitting down in his chair. "Although I suppose you came up for a different matter." "Well, it's about, well, have you gotten anything back from Anima yet?" Ymar questioned, with a hint of concern in her voice. Ozma blinked, noticing such a tone, and solemnly shaking his head. "No, I haven't. I do know that your parents are fine, although I do think for now they are being limited by Sargonus," Ozma attempted to explain, but Ymar finished the thought for him. "So no, you don't need to explain. I figured news travels fast and I'd hear if there was actual trouble. I just wanted to know before." Ymar trailed off, leaving it at that, without even saying a formal farewell, heading downstairs. Ozma merely silently lowered his head and returned his gaze to the gathering storm clouds. It was going to rain. Try hard. Oh boy. Try hard. Okay, whatever. I feel like these are some awful chapter titles. It's a good story. It's a good story. It's very limited in how it relates to RWBY, but it's a good story. Alright. Cassandra woke again to a horrid sight, the smell of sulfur, smoke, and fire threatening to choke her once again. Fanning the horrid puffs of black smog from her face, she looked around at the burning remnants of Vale. Not again, Cassandra muttered, quickly rushing around. She'd seen this dream before. She wasn't going to fear it again. She was in control, right? Running past the burnt, pierced corpses of many a fallen soldier and huntsman, Cassandra struggled to pay no heed. It only slowed her pace when she either heard a groan or a cry of pain. All around her, the conflagration of fiery hatred threatened to take away what was dear to her. She cried out for someone, anyone. Panic began to set in her heart as she continued to mumble, and cry out for something. Then she stopped, cold in her steps, and cupped her mouth with her hands, already feeling tears drip down her cheek. Ahead of her was a stop sign impaled into the ground, broken in half. No! Cassandra cried out, a blast of magic incinerating the tree she took a nap under, and drenching her slightly once the raindrops were unburdened by cover. Shaking her head and groaning, Cassandra tried to comprehend what the dream was about, what it was trying to say. Later, Cassandra muttered to herself. It was time now for the assault. Adjusting her hat again, Cassandra looked at her reflection through one of the murky puddles formed by the torrent of rain plummeting to the earth. The image of the broken stop sign came to mind again. A few hours passed since the incident with her dream, and already Cassandra's team was pushing forward. The two guards who intercepted their path across the streets of Vale were merely playthings for telekinesis or other knockbacks. Looking around, the streets of Vale this time was alien. Windows and doors were boarded up as if people knew the city was about to erupt into combat. The cobblestone beneath them stood out in stark difference to memory. Were there always cracks in the stone? Even the flowers and gardens of the Maleficent city seemed dulled by the dark clouds of the skies. As if to herald such a difference, such a dark clone of what was once pure, the sky roared with thunder for a brief moment, illuminating the citadel ahead. The silhouettes of vast numbers of royal guardsmen stood out as gargoyles atop the ramparts of the walls. They would fall quickly. Cassandra, leading the initial charge, hopped onto her broom as it dashed ahead, soaring towards the ramparts. In response, clouds of arrows and spells flew towards the charging witch. Of course, it took more than a mere cloud to stop her, and she quickly twisted her broom to the side and rose her hand up, making the somatic requirements for a barrier to be conjured around her. The arrows measly knocked against the barrier, breaking the wooden shafts used to accelerate the iron spearheads, and letting such refuse fall to the streets below. Cassandra leapt from her broom and quickly took down one of the guards. As two more charged from behind her, a quick arc from the broom knocked the two from the walls. They hoped they didn't break too many bones. Casting the thought of any worry aside, Cassandra kept fighting back. A blade would have finally found its mark in her back, were it not for a crimson rift opening behind her and the hilt of a stop sign sending the soldier hurling back. A little late, Malin, Cassandra yelled, blasting a row of soldiers around with one well-placed fireball. A swing of the heavy-fitting sign knocked a small cluster of soldiers to the ground, either off the wall or to the floor. I know, I should have jumped with you. I don't like riding flying brooms. Maleficent refuted as a pair of daggers and a shower of magic cards heralded the arrival of Tara and Yamara. Team's all here. We should get this done quickly. Quickly? Yamara's comment was intercepted by a quickly made parry from a silver dagger and a shadow that intercepted one of the guards' broadswords. Agreed, Tara smiled as she looked back at Yamara. A friend she saved yet again and slashed thrice at the guard, knocking them over the fence of the ramparts. The group of 4 rebels fought dwindling numbers as they barged into the interior of the keep. Once the gates of the interior courtyard were blasted aside, the grandiose hallways of the True Heart Castle laid bare to their eyes. A hallway of gilded pillars of a red and gold carpet and well-lit torches offered a refreshing retreat from the drenching rain. Rushing inside, the 4 rebels sealed the door behind them, applying an arcane lock to prevent anyone outside pursuing them from there. Say what you wish about this guy. I think he overdid himself. My parents would most certainly do not adorn the hallways with... Yamara touched one of the pillars. With pure gold? What can you honestly say, Yamara? He's a king. Kings can do that. Tara chuckled, spinning a dagger on her finger. Yamara gawked at the sheer radiance and sheer price that the pillars must have costed. Come on, don't get lost in your own reflection. There was a king that was cursed with gold. Maleficent chirped at Yamara, who quickly snapped out of her stunned condition and rushed alongside her team. At the end of the gilded hallway of red and gold stood the great monumental doors of the throne room. Cassandra had never met the king, and the team all wondered what Leonius looked like. A young noble with auburn hair, a well-built blonde hero. What awaited the team was their destination and end goal, and with a simple knock spell, the group kicked the door open. The figure who sat on the throne was unlike anyone's thoughts. The king was not young, with a small gray beard and wizened look on his regal face. A scar was prominent across his left eye, and a gilded crown adorned the gray truffle of his hair. His eyes, too, were worn and light brown, nothing extraordinary or noteworthy, and yet the king was well built, too, and adorned in golden plate armor. All were relics of past battles and wars that the king fought in. So you must be the rebels who are causing so much of a ruckus. You're all children, and you must be King Leonius Trueheart. I know, before we get on to this next part, I can see that she's being respectful, in quotes, but oh god. I still wish it would have been and you're an old man. Anyways, Maleficent bowed, keeping courtesy towards the king, who merely shook his head at the sight. Standing up for the throne, the king took a few steps forward towards the rebels. Please, I do not wish for any more bloodshed. You'll be getting more bloodshed using liches to try and kill me, Cassandra refuted with a shout, her broom ready to whack an old fool. Little girl, please, understand. I had no choice. Vale was, Leonius trailed off, finding his voice for a moment. Vale's a mere shadow of what it used to be. Our economy is slowly dwindling. He offered me a chance to rebuild the kingdom, a chance to regain respect and territory. I had to listen to his orders and kill my friend. Yamara let loose a soft growl, giving a glare to the lowly king. You're a disgrace, Trueheart. By the will of the Scarlet family, we will denounce you of your title, Leonius sighed deeply. I wish we could have met under normal circumstances, Scarlet, Leonius said, with as much remorse as he could make clear to them. Raising a gauntlet up, the body of the king was suddenly illuminated in a bright light. When the light dissipated, the face of Leonius was covered in a golden helmet equipped with a visor. From beneath the visor were two glowing points of silver light. With a sudden charge, a maul made of hardened silver material suddenly appeared in the plated hands of the mournful king as he swung, scattering the team about. Ugh, Cassandra yelped. I don't know how to say that. Landing with her back against a pillar and broom in hand. Yamara was the first to engage the king alongside Terra, continuing to throw daggers at any weak points that the king's armor had. Each sound of metal colliding with sonorous clangs, each sound of magic whizzing through the air. It was a cacophony of noise. The armor of the king did not falter, bend, crack, or sunder from any normal attack. Even a full whack from Maleficent's stop sign did little to even stumble the king, who retaliated by flinging Maleficent back via a wave of silver energy. Little was done to progress the fight, and Leonius was managing to push ahead further. Cassandra attempted to study Leonius' moves when a direct swing managed to hit Yamara square in the chest, almost completely shattering her aura and sending her flying back. Yamara! Cassandra cried out, feeling anger boil in her blood. She looked behind her at the pillar she was still on. Cassandra then fired a simple homing missile at the king's visor, grabbing Leonius' attention as he shot a simple gaze to the witch. Come on, you old son of a Borbatusk, come on! Cassandra taunted, valuing her friend's safety and making sure they stopped taking a beating. The plan worked to an extent. Leonius charged towards Cassandra, motes of light being left in a trail that blazed across the stone floor. Jumping over the swing of the maul, the hammer hit the golden pillar, sundering it almost in half and disestablishing part of the roof. Stumbling back after part of the roof smashed his helm, Leonius groaned as he attempted to regain composure. He quickly found out that a rift had suddenly caught his foot and looked back to where Cassandra was now. This ends here, Arcana Buster, Cassandra yelled, channeling a large bout of magic through her. Too much, in fact. Maleficent sensed the sudden buildup of energy far surpassing her own. Did she finally awaken? Maleficent quickly shielded her team as the throne room lit up with an arcane glow, and then exploded in a conflagration of pure arcane energy, type of which is only possible by the greatest of archmages. Coughing and wiping away the smoke and dust from the blast, the team looked at the stunned Leonidas, parts of his armor chipped away, and a small trickle of blood flowing from his hair. Away from him, Cassandra was unconscious, sparks of arcane energy arcing across the floor nearby her as her body twitched. "Cassandra!" Ymara cried out as she rushed towards her friend, shaking her awake. What? Cassandra groaned, a bit incoherent as she awoke, her vision a blur. You did it, Tara attempted to explain, but it was at a loss for words. Maleficent stayed silent, letting the word out to Ozma that the fight was over. Looking at the ruins of the throne room around her, the rain had finally ceased, and the orange sky of dusk was now visible through the rifts through the roof. Perhaps she did finally awaken. The days passed with little news or combat. The news was all over the world of 4 rebels who fought against Leonidas. Leonidas himself, after recovering from his minor injuries, confessed to the deal and accepted the fact of his removal of power. Ozma had shown up to promise democracy and electoral process to try and mend the vacuum of power now left in Vale. It wasn't the brightest of times in Vale, but the kingdom was at peace. But greater concerns remained. Cassandra sat upon the cliffsides of Beacon, looking to the distance behind Maleficent. The two hadn't really said anything about what occurred at the throne room. Finally, Maleficent spoke. "I didn't expect you to do that so soon." "What do you mean?" Cassandra raised an eyebrow at Maleficent's comment. What did she mean? "I mean, remember that I told you that you were special. I didn't expect you to show that potential so soon. I mean, that's not a simple thing to do. You shook the entire castle," Maleficent exclaimed softly, as Cassandra cocked her head to the side, confused. "You know what? Forget it. The point of the matter is, I'm impressed. You did good." Maleficent gave a warm smile. The starborn before her was starting to finally mature. The two looked back to the horizon. Cassandra then had another question. "Ozma said we were probably going to be sent to Vacuo. Something about a distress call in response to us pulling off the stunt. I think we both know the answer to that." Maleficent simply stated, staring into the distance. Vacuo was a long ways away, in southern Sanis. The sands and savannas held all sorts of dangers that were not present in Vale. Thugs and bandits prowled the sandy wastelands in search of gold and water. Cassandra knew that they'd be ready for the challenge. The answer was yes, they would head out to Vacuo. They would help whoever would need help. As the two looked to the sunset over the horizon, Cassandra was filled with hope for the future. "Matara, my dear." Heinrich gave a low bow to his wife, who was tapping her ivory claws on the edge of her throne. The emerald and gold and motif robes deceiving the true nature of her personality. "It appears that Leonidas has faltered, and we are about to lose Vale to democracy," Heinrich stated with some hesitation. Standing up from her throne, the terrible Archlich simply shook her head, waltzing towards her sire. Caressing the cheek of her love, Matara offered a soft, smug smile. "Do not fret, Heinrich. I do not fear or worry about this little starborn whelp. If she oversteps her boundaries, I will be there to throw her disheveled corpse back down." Matara chirped with a hint of lust in her voice, giving a soft kiss to Heinrich's neck. He indeed was loyal to his wife, but throughout the years Matara had grown evil. It sounded so odd to call her as evil. Heinrich is no stranger to committing atrocities. And yet, as Matara let Heinrich gaze into the abyss of her eyes, the endless darkness whose only light sources were the amber pinpoints that served as her pupils and irises. Then again, he found a little bit of bloodshed and a little bit of refined pleasures helped curb out some of the stress as he embraced his wife yet again. "Not if I sweep them off their feet first, my dear," Heinrich chirped, already formulating more plans, and acting inscrutable to the Queen of Remnant. Oh. So I don't know how much I exactly read there. So I read, I only read like 2 chapters there. Or, no. Okay, I read 3 chapters there. But I think we'll end it here as we start the very awkwardly named chapter 1.2, even though it really should be 2.1. But, you know. So, yeah. So this is like the volume 2 or whatever. Or this is just, I don't know, this is just volume 2 of the story. Yeah. So next time we'll come back for this. Well, next time it'll be another chapter of Not Guilty, and then we'll come back for this. And yeah, we'll see what happens afterwards. These stories are going to take quite a while to get through, so it may be a while before you see anything different. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Yeah.